The Toronto Maple Leafs are looking to make some big moves as they're in the middle of the Christopher Tanev sweepstakes with the Calgary Flames. Multiple other teams interested as well. And for Brad Treliving and the Maple Leafs, their needs at the trade deadline are abundantly clear. All of that and more in this episode of Leafs Digest. Welcome back to Leafs Digest. My name is Darius Domingues. And guys, we've noticed that about 80% of our viewers are not actually subscribed to the channel. So if you want to do yourself a favor, hit subscribe to stay up to date with everything Toronto Maple Leafs, whether it be trade rumors heading into the trade deadline and, a lot of fun. We're going to have a lot of fun here on this channel heading into the playoffs. It's going to be fun. The playoffs in Toronto are a different beast. But without further ado, let's get right into it. The Toronto Maple Leafs are obviously targeting Chris Tanev. We've talked about it for weeks, but it looks like the Leafs might be falling behind in the sweepstakes. Or are they? We'll get into it. But here from David Alter just a couple hours ago, it looks like the Stars, not the Maple Leafs, are the front runners for Chris Tanev from the Calgary Flames, as the Flames are waiting for a first-round pick in return. And we've talked about it for, a couple of weeks. A first-round pick is the asking price for Chris Tanev from the Calgary Flames. At least that is from the Calgary Flames themselves. Personally, I just don't know. If you're a Toronto Maple Leafs fan, if you're a Toronto Maple Leafs GM and Brad Treliving, the former GM of the Calgary Flames, I'm not sure a first-round pick is good to give up for Chris Tanev. I'm not sure he's worth that price in general, and I'm not sure he's worth that to the Toronto Maple Leafs. You're better off spending that first-round pick to go get, an absolute stud right-handed defenseman if possible. But to get further into it, the reality behind why Chris Tanev hasn't been moved yet is because all of the teams that have shown interest, and we know that a dozen teams have reached out, I assume throughout the entire season, nobody has slapped a first-round pick on the table, and that is from Pierre LeBrun, and which is why I think the Flames have been waiting to be patient and see if the market plays out. And honestly, it looks like the market is going to play out, because if the Calgary Flames continue to ask for a first-round pick for Chris Tanev and nobody's budging, it looks like this could go on till deadline day, and the Flames are just going to have to take the best offer. So will the Leafs be able to give them the best offer? That is going to be the interesting thing to keep an eye on, because the Leafs, unlike other teams in the mix, do not have a second-round pick. They can't sweeten the pot as well as other teams in the mix can, like Dallas, like we've heard Vancouver. We've also heard Ottawa, which, again, I've talked about is very weird. I would just, if he wants to go to Ottawa and Ottawa wants him, wait till the offseason. He is a free agent. That is another thing for the Leafs. You don't want to give up a first-round pick for him. And he's a UFA. You need to re-sign. You need to make sure he re-signs and comes back to Toronto. You do not want to trade for any more UFAs. We've talked about it. If you're the Leafs GM in Brad Treliving, do not go after UFAs again, and especially UFAs that show zero interest in signing with the Toronto Maple Leafs. Could be very problematic, all right? But yes, Chris Tanev would be a great ad for the Leafs. But again, can they make it work? I'm not sure. If it comes down to trade deadline day, which I'm absolutely certain at this point, it looks like it's going to, because teams are not going to budge on that first round pick. Nobody has even tabled it, and they're still, valuing him at a first round pick. I think it could come down to trade deadline day, and we'll have to see if the Leafs are in the mix. Like I said, it's not only that they don't have a second round pick this year, they don't have a second round pick for a couple of years that they can slap down on the table. So other teams might be able to outbid them, but it's going to be interesting to keep an eye on. But from Pierre LeBrun, again, on Insider Trading, he says the Stars are the front runners for Chris Tanev at this time. They've let the Flames know that they are willing to offer, but that package does not include the first round pick the Flames are looking for as of right now, and that's why Tanev has not moved yet, and that is why he's also not a Toronto Maple Leaf. I mean, if it was up to Brad Treliving, I'm sure Chris Tanev would be a Toronto Maple Leaf in November. He would have been a Toronto Maple Leaf for a long time already. This is a really good player that Brad Treliving likes from his time in Calgary. So it's going to be interesting to see that other teams are in on the mix. That's a little surprising to me. It's not what I've heard up until this point. The term a dozen teams are in on him. We've only heard so far, Dallas, Vancouver, Ottawa, Toronto's in the mix. I'm sure there's maybe a couple other teams, but no real prominent front runners, I'd say, except for the Stars at this time, because they've tabled their offer. But so have the Leafs, and I guess it's not good enough. They'll have to wait till the trade deadline day and see how that plays out. But from a fan's perspective, I'm sure that Leaf fans would love to see Chris Tanev in the Maple Leafs blue and white. I mean, he could be partnered with Morgan Rielly. That could be a great defensive pairing, just like Luke Schenn was last year. And to play into what we've been talking about so far in this video, the Leafs got Luke Schenn last year, a great defensive partner for Morgan Rielly, who really, helped the Leafs get over the hump and beat the Tampa Bay Lightning. It was a great pairing and really solidified the Leafs defense for a third rounder last year. And we're all supposed to believe that, Matt Dumba or Chris Tanev or these guys are worth first rounders, maybe to their teams, yes. And obviously the teams want to value them as high as possible. I'm just not sure that's the case. I'm just not sure they are living in reality at this time, right? And like they talked about in a couple videos ago, it could be the Flames throwing this out to the media to inflate their players. It's going to be very interesting to keep an eye on. It's something that because the free agent, not only the free agent class, but everyone being dealt at the deadline this year is not as good as last year or the year previous. Just the type of player, and a lot of the UFA class this year is not great. If you look at last year's, it was pretty good, especially for depth players. This year, not as good, or not looking as good because a lot of players have re-signed as well. So that's going to be interesting to keep an eye on. But yeah, I mean, if you want to take a look at this too and just take a couple seconds to read it, I know it's a lot on the screen, but the Leafs, we've talked about it, and I've talked about it in a previous video, that the Leafs have no right-handed defensemen. Well, very little. I mean, they have Timothy Liljegren and a few in the minors, but nothing right now. They have Timothy Liljegren, so they need to look at adding a guy like Chris Tanev. I think that would be great for the team. And yesterday they ran out only for left-handed defensemen, and that is not good. Letting Justin Hall walk. We talked about it last year. Justin Hall, the fans were on him throughout the playoffs. All the fans wanted him gone, and now we could really use a right-handed defenseman. I'm not saying we could use Justin Hall, but we could use a right-handed defenseman, right? It's very interesting how that is all played out for the Leafs, letting a guy like that go. And then obviously they signed Klingberg, who's not, known to be a defensive defenseman, but he went down with injury as well. That really hurt the Leafs as well. I mean, they're down a couple guys. The cap relief is great, but you would have liked to see. It's just easier to break the puck out. We saw it last night how this is an issue, that the Leafs were not breaking the puck out as smoothly as they had been, in the 7-game stretch that they won, or the 7-game winning streak. They were not breaking it out as cleanly, and it might have something to do with a couple of the guys were trying to break it out on their backhands. It's not as easy. They need a right shot defenseman. So, I thought it was pretty interesting this week too that the Seattle Kraken came out and said they do not want to move Adam Larsson, because Adam Larsson, like we talked about a couple of videos ago, is a guy that could slot in with Morgan Rielly as well, and maybe the defense could be fixed like that, because like we talked about, McCabe and Benoit, you don't want to split them up. Brody and Liljegren have been good together as well. It's going to be something to keep an eye on. They said that they don't want to trade him, but maybe if the right trade package is on the table, they could do it. I'm not sure. I just don't think a first-round pick for Chris Tanev makes sense for the Toronto Maple Leafs or most other teams. And I think that could help the Leafs, but it could also not. The Leafs might not have enough to get to the point on trade deadline day to acquire him, but at the same time, the Leafs shouldn't give up their first-round pick for that player. And if they want to keep him, if they want to keep that first-round pick, use it for a huge fish. Go out and get an absolute dynamite defenseman, which I've been saying all season they probably should, but we'll see how it plays out. It is trade deadline time, and I'm sure Brad Treliving would want to play with the defense in the offseason anyway, so we'll see how it all plays out. Hopefully the Leafs continue to play well and come together at the right time, which it looks like they are. But let me know what you think in the comments. Should the Leafs target Chris Tanev? Should they just throw the first-round pick into the sun and acquire him over all these other teams? Give Calgary exactly what they want. Is that something you would like to see or not like to see? Let me know in the comments, and let me know what you think about how the Leafs have been playing. Is it the type of year that you would put all your eggs in one basket and go for it, or would you, put your foot on the brake a little bit and see what they got next year? See if you can retool in the summer, at least on the defensive side of things. So let me know what you think in the comments, and Nick and I will be back for another video tomorrow.